My name's Tom Ross, and welcome to the Honest Entrepreneur Show, where I'm bringing you tried and tested advice to help your online business without any of the bullshit. Today, I'm going to be sharing my strategy for producing great quality content every single time. So many people I talk to seem incredibly insecure and self-conscious when it comes to their content. They feel they're not good enough. They feel they have no value to bring to the world. And even people who are ridiculously great and talented seem to kind of run into these blocks. This is commonly known as imposter syndrome, where you basically feel like you have nothing to offer and you suck. This is, of course, very, very rarely true, and it's normally all in our head. And I don't want to get too kind of kumbaya here, but I really, really believe that each of us has something unique and special, some kind of value that we can add and bring to the world. So here are my top tips for how to produce better quality, more compelling content. Tip number 1 is share your truth. People never want a kind of watered down, diluted version of someone else's truth. And if you're just endlessly regurgitating other people's advice for your own, people will see through it. People appreciate originality, uniqueness. And like I say, they don't want a second-rate version of someone else. Unfortunately, a huge amount of information is just from headline readers that do regurgitate what others say. I see this all the time. I see it in blog articles. I see it in Instagram memes. It's the same old bad advice that just goes round and round and round. And it's so clear it didn't originate from the person. It seems to have no unique value to it at all. And for me as a consumer of content, this is a huge turn-off. I literally glance at that content and just write it off. And in the process, I write the person off. It can be that damaging for your brand just to regurgitate and put out crap quality content. Now, I understand typically people will do this as a result of imposter syndrome. They feel insecure, they feel like they've got nothing to add, and so they just take advice from elsewhere and then put it out as their own. However, I also believe that sharing your personal truth can be a really, really powerful and compelling thing for others. For example, are you just starting out in hand lettering or some kind of craft like that? If you are, then share your journey of learning it. Let your audience learn with you. Share your ups and downs. Don't just go and recycle some advice from an established A-lister in your space. You might not feel like this stuff is interesting, but I promise you there are people out there who will deeply care and resonate with learning with you, with seeing your early stage journey. Not everyone enjoys seeing these A-listers. They are in many ways unrelatable. This is why I'm getting so much great feedback about what I'm doing here with my personal brand. It's because I'm sharing the insight from day one. People can see as this thing develops and grows, and I share the entire journey. I share my bad weeks, my failures, my ups and downs, lessons learned, all of it. I just put it out there for the world. And from my perspective, I find that kind of content a lot more interesting, a lot more unique than just what all the celebrities in my space are saying like over and over again. Remember, no one is perfect. So opening up and sharing that imperfect but unique version of yourself really is interesting. If you haven't yet, do go and watch or listen to my episode about authenticity and being your authentic self, because I dive a little bit deeper on this stuff. But the point is, if you messed up and you hit a mental block with whatever it is you're doing and you spent the day frustrated and crying, it's cool to share that. If you're elated because you had a huge breakthrough and a huge win that day, share that too. And share the in-betweens. Did you find a time-saving hack which is going to help your audience? Share it all. Tip number 2 is to actually ask your audience. If you've been following my content at all, then you'll know I'm a huge proponent for actually talking to your audience, getting to know them, getting to care about them, and build real relationships with that community. In the process of getting to know them and speak with them regularly, you should be getting to empathize with them. You should be learning about their struggles, what they care about, their desires, their fears. All of that should start to emerge as you actually get to know these people. And that can be a fantastic source of content that's going to help them and bring them value. You shouldn't be out there guessing. You shouldn't be shooting in the dark with this stuff. So when you actually have these conversations with your audience, it's going to shed light on some great potential ideas for content. To give you an example of this, when I started Design Cuts, as I've talked about on this show, I was working crazy hours. I was so busy. I was frenetic. I was working 18 hours a day. Yet in the early days, I still made time for roughly 1 hour a day for over 2 months to jump on a phone call, a one-on-one chat with one customer. And that was one of the best things that I ever did, because by having those dozens and dozens of phone calls, every single time I'd come away pumped up and inspired. Instead of shouting into the void and guessing what we should be selling and what content we should be producing, I came away with 1 to 2 golden nuggets of advice and wisdom from that customer every time that then sparked a plethora of ideas and inspiration. It's one of the best things you can do. And it's so nice to actually put a face to this community instead of just, this collection of numbers. So many people make it a one-way conversation. Make it a dialogue. Some ways to do this include use the ask a question feature on your Instagram stories. Have one-on-one conversations like I did, whether that's on DM or Messenger or the phone. Do surveys and polls asking them what kind of struggles they have and what kind of stuff they're into. And if you have a newsletter, this is perfect. In your welcome email, end it by saying, and I'd love to know, what can I help with? What are you struggling with? What are you looking to learn right now? Any of those types of questions, and encourage people to hit respond to that email and directly come back to you in your inbox. You should be through that getting a constant stream of ideas, which you can then look for patterns, look for the most compelling questions and struggles and pain points, and turn that into fantastic content. And outside of this, maybe you don't have a newsletter. Maybe you haven't really got many people in your audience yet. There's just a few and you're not getting much traction when you're asking them directly for feedback. A great tip is to go and pay attention to what they're doing. Go on their profiles, go on their websites, go on their feeds. What are they talking about? Are they complaining about stuff? Are they trying to learn stuff? Is there a pattern in terms of what they're sharing and what they're interested in and what they think is cool? Go and just kind of have a bit of a look around and soak all of that up. Really learn to get a feel for your community. And in doing that, the ideas for content they actually are going to care about will start to kind of bubble to the surface. Tip number 3 is to constantly iterate based around engagement. Let me explain. I'm a huge believer in continually iterating your content strategy based on how it's performing. Now, this is actually super simple. Put out content, you probably are already, and pay attention. What is working, what's outperforming and doing the best, and what's doing the worst. Do less of the worst, maybe drop it, and do more of what is working. Do more of the best. And then use that best content, what seems to really, really resonate deeply with your audience, and try and feed off of that, spin off of that, and kind of get new arms and new ideas coming from this point that's really working. So if something's doing fantastically, you think, oh, maybe I'll try a different angle on that, or I'll tweak that, or I'll try something different around that, and then rinse and repeat. You can keep doing this. So you're kind of continually moving in the right direction because you're just shedding that bad content. You're doing more of the good content. You then try various bits off of that, and then you see what's working out of those new bits, and you shed the worst and you keep doing the best, and you will sort of iteratively move in the right direction by doing this. It's very easy to say. It's quite a simple concept. Hardly anyone actually does this. Unless you're like a hardcore social media manager, individuals normally don't do this, but it's so easy. Just actually start paying attention. Look at the numbers, look at the comments, look at the feedback on your current content, and it should be a pretty clear indication in terms of the direction you should be pushing. I'm already doing this with this show, for example. So I put out an episode a few episodes ago, which was like a free web design course. And I saw that over index. That got maybe like 25%, 50% more engagement than other episodes. And so I thought, okay, people seem to like this kind of tactical, very actionable, applicable advice. And so I put out a subsequent episode doing a similar thing for Instagram, where I shared my kind of actionable tactics around that platform. That's a great example of just me paying attention, doing something similar. And funny enough, that episode seems to be pretty popular too. And I'm not going to pigeonhole myself. I'm going to keep trying new ideas as well. So I'm going to be dropping some content that's like more deeply personal and like really vulnerable and that kind of stuff. And, you know, maybe that resonates really strongly with you guys and you love it. Or maybe you're like, this is self-indulgent and you don't want to hear it. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to react accordingly. Tip number 4 is obsess about bringing your audience value. You've probably heard me talk about bringing value quite a lot. And I know it can sound quite abstract, but to quote my former business mentors, once again, remember, it is not about using your audience, it's about serving them. How are you going to serve your audience better? How are you going to help them? How are you going to bring them something valuable to them? The trick is to stop creating and producing content in a kind of egotistical bubble and being a hermit with your content. Just try and get out of your own head and get into the shoes of your customers and of your community and of your followers. Think, when you're making this content, is it going to bring them value in terms of, will it entertain them? Is it going to teach them something? Is it going to help them find clarity in some way? If it's doing none of those things and you can't really see any benefit, then maybe don't put that content out and go back to the drawing board. Every time you sit down and start planning a piece of content, try to actually have one imaginary member of your audience, or better yet, a real member of your audience, front and center in your mind. So let's say you've got a really engaged audience member, they support a lot of what you do. Try and think about them when you're producing your next piece of content. Are they going to like it? Is it going to resonate with them? Are they going to find it funny? Is it going to help them? All that kind of stuff can be super helpful to lead you down a good path of content creation. Tip number 5 is to simply brain dump. And what I mean by this is get all of those ideas swirling around your head and just dump them out onto a bit of paper. And remember, don't worry about the bad ideas. There really are no bad ideas, just lazy ones. If you fill pages and pages of paper with all these ideas swirling around your head, who cares if some of them suck to you? Because you never know what getting that onto a bit of paper might trigger. Maybe that leads down a random tangent, which leads to a fantastic idea. This is a really, really solid tip for just triggering more lateral thinking. Because when we're bouncing around inside our own head, it can be pretty tricky to see the wood for the trees. And so really just getting it all down and sitting back and seeing what you've got can be a great starting point. And finally, tip number 6 is try and get yourself out of that negative mindset. When you're racked with insecurity and imposter syndrome and you feel like you're useless and you can't do anything, it's not really all that conducive to creating compelling quality content. It's really essential to try and pull yourself out of that mindset and find that positive flow state in your content creation. Realize that no one cares but you. You are the only one holding yourself back. You're the one bouncing around in your own head. Like no one else is out there judging you the way you think they are or might. And whilst there is of course no magic fix for getting past this kind of block, my best advice would be get out of your own head and get into someone else's. And what I mean by that is the less you think about yourself and the more you think about your audience and serving them, it gets a whole lot easier. It's a lot harder to feel insecure when you're actively putting yourself in someone else's shoes and you're thinking in terms of what they're going to like, rather than thinking all about like, oh, woe is me, I'm so stuck and I'm so useless. When you really start thinking about that other person, it opens up all kinds of possibilities. You think when I was on those 1-hour calls with Design Cut's early community members and customers, I was there thinking, oh, I'm an imposter, I suck, I'm awful. No, I was listening, I was nodding along, I was taking notes, I was asking questions, I was interested in them. I didn't have time to feel like an imposter when I easily could have, because I was making it all about my audience. So that is my top tips for creating better quality content. I really, really implore you to go through these again and try and apply some to what you're doing with your business or your brand or just your social media content in general. I promise you they're absolutely what have worked for me over the years, and they might sound simple, and I guarantee you're probably not doing them quite as well as you could be. Good luck. Do let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, let me know if you're doing any of these, if you're going to try any of these. I cannot wait to hear how you get on. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. Really, really appreciate you being here with me. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe right here on YouTube. Remember, tick the little bell icon so that you get proper notifications. I really hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you'll stick around for the upcoming episodes. I really want to keep bringing you as much value as possible. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys soon.